Tucked away in downtown Peterborough, there's a hidden gem where history comes to life. The Phoenix Mill House at the Monadnock Center for History and Culture has seen many seasons since its days as a mill workers' home in the 19th century. Today, a team of volunteer interpreters share how the Prescott family lived in the mill house in the 1830s. From cooking to daily chores and handcrafts, the team has researched and experimented to learn how a working family lived nearly 200 years ago. New Year's Day is around the corner. John, as mill overseer Samuel Prescott, and Lorraine, as his wife Nancy, with the help of their children Augustus and Georgiana, played by Brigham and Catherine, are balancing their accounts and cleaning house to get the new year off to a bright and prosperous start. This is New Year's in the Mill House.
It's almost New Year's Day, and one of the things that we like to do is make sure our houses are really clean on New Year's Day. So the first thing I'm going to do is try cleaning up some of these pots. You can see they've got a lot of soot and tarnish, soot on here, and they need a good cleaning. There's brass underneath here. I just need to make it so you can see it again. So I've got two things that I'm using. One of them, I just rubbed some bricks together, and so it's brick dust. And I just put a little water in the brick dust. Use some elbow grease. Just keep rubbing. Nice. The brass is coming through. Let's see. Wow, that's pretty good. All right. I want to try, though, let me see how the salt does, because that's supposed to be a good cleaner, too. I think you're looking for something that's abrasive. I think some people use sand even. Well, I can already tell you, brick dust is much better. The salt's taking it off, but I'm having to work a lot harder at this, so I'm going to stick with the brick dust. So I'll just keep cleaning here till I get this brass shining like it's brand new. I do want to show you my broom that I'm using. This was made right here by Samuel Prescott using the broom corn that we grow out in our kitchen garden. And I think it's brilliant. And you know, and the other thing it points out is this is how they made brooms in 1830. This is how they make brooms right now too. Brooms haven't changed very much. It was actually the Shakers who took the round broom and decided to flatten it. And that's what this is, a flattened version of a broom.
Well, it's New Year's and customary for all the townspeople to settle their accounts on that beginning of a new year. And the Prescotts would have been trying to do that on their limited income. It looked like with Samuel working for 69 cents an hour.
A day,
sorry. He was only going to make, if the mill was busy, $200 a year.
right.
Now they've got to fit into $200 a year. Major expenses, home, shelter. They don't own this place.
No, so they're gonna rent this place, and the mill is charging them $5 a month. But if they take in boarders, which we know they did, they would reduce the rent depending on how many boarders they had, and the boarders would just stay here upstairs, which adds cash because you don't have to put out the $5 for rent, but it adds work because Nancy's got to feed them, buying more groceries for them. She's got to, it adds to her laundry. She would also be doing their mending. She's already doing sewing probably on a regular basis as her kids grow. The 4 children that they had, she has to refit the clothing. So if the first child is thin, the next one's a little heavier. She's got to figure out a way to add a gusset or something and expand that clothing so it fits the next child.
Okay, so let's still say $60 for rent,
Okay.
given offsets and whatever.
What's next?
Next expense would be fuel, I would think, as it is today. A little unheated, uninsulated cottage like this might use 10 cords of wood a year.
Okay, and that was
Because we're
at,
not just heating it, we're running the kitchen fireplace
right, and at that
365
time,
days a year.
a cord of wood was about $4 a cord.
So you're talking $40, $60 for rent, $40 for
Okay.
fuel, we're half done.
Half the income is gone, okay. And we still have to buy
And
some
we've got to
food.
buy food.
Right, because all they have here is they have some vegetables out of the garden, small garden, and they have some chickens.
Small city lot, no cow.
No cows,
No wood lot.
No, so you've got to buy your dairy, you've got to buy any meat that you're going to have, and meat was running about 7 to 10 cents a pound, whether it be beef or lamb. So they still have all those expenses. They would have to make the meat stretch, but with stews and hashes and everything and savory pies. But it's still going to add having those extra people to feed.
But the distinction is that we're not a self-sustaining little farm.
No.
We're living with a wage economy, so we're not raising wheat or corn to take to the grist mill. We've got to buy all the flour and all this cornmeal and all the cider and everything else that we consume.
Right. They're going to go through all that money pretty rapidly.
Do you think with such a tight budget there was any chance of their kids going to school beyond the public schools paid for by taxes?
I doubt it. I doubt it. I mean, there was a private school, the Peterborough Academy, that opened in 1837, but that would have been tuition students, and there's just not enough money in their budget to be able to send any of their children.
So their schooling ended with the primary grades.
Right, and for
I
Augustus, the oldest one,
assume the kids then sought employment
you're right, Augustus went to work at the Phoenix Mill, so he would have been going off to work each day with Samuel.
with his dad.
With his dad.
And a lunch bucket from Nancy.
From Nancy.
Or maybe they lived close enough they came home for lunch.
Right, they could have. They could have.
Well, with such a tight budget, it doesn't look like there was much left over for anything frivolous in
No.
Prescott life.
No, I think they lived a very basic life, and but simple but happy.
If you can call a 60-hour work week happy.
True.
The Native Americans had a story about popcorn. They believed that inside each little kernel there was a guy, and as the fire heated him up, he would get very, very angry, and eventually he'd pop out.
There's a lot of other folklore and superstitions around New Year's Day, and one of my favorites is the one that if the first person that comes through your door is a dark-haired man on New Year's Day, that means you're going to have happiness and prosperity for the coming year. And they even gave the man a name. He was called the First Footer.
Well, another tradition was on New Year's Eve with the chiming of the family clock. At the strike of first midnight, the patriarch would go to the door, open it up to the outside to let out the old year and all its travails, and welcome in the new. And at the last chime of 12, the door was shut to begin the new year.
Well, I heard that you weren't supposed to take anything out of the house on the new year because then that would mean you would lose a lot of things in the next year.
Now, did Samuel Prescott work during New Year's?
Not sure. That really depended on the owner of the mill. Some mill owners felt that it was a regular work day and their workers were expected to show up, and others felt it was a holiday and did not. And I don't know Samuel Smith's sentiments on that.
Well, if he did have the day off, then most likely Samuel and Nancy would have gone visiting neighbors. They may have taken their children with them, but they would have just gone for quick visits in the neighborhood to say Happy New Year to the neighbors.
Well, I heard that when we went to visit the neighbors, they would give us little cakes as gifts.
New Year's was a traditional gift-giving time, and there were special books published to be given as New Year's gifts with titles like The New Year's Gift, New Year's Anthology, that were collections of stories for the recipient to read through the coming year for their enjoyment.
Back in the 1830s, there were many forms of entertainment. Especially when you were sitting at home through the dark and cold winters, people would make up their own ways, either through reading stories, telling their own stories that they've learned from past generations. Tonight we have something very special for you. I have asked my brothers to help present a shadow puppet play from an old Peterborough story. This story is based off of the witches that were once believed to be in the world. There once was a small, lean, aged woman by the name of Mrs. Stinson who lived in Peterborough in the 1800s and was believed to be a witch by most of the townsfolk. Here's her story. One day, a local resident noticed a stray cat acting very strangely. Thinking the cat might be dangerous, he doused the cat with a bucket of boiling hot water. But upon tossing the water, the cat completely vanished. Almost immediately after, Mrs. Stinson appeared from around the corner, and the full length of her back was dreadfully burnt. A short time later, a good man who lived on a farm near the town line between Sharon and Peterborough shot a crow who was eating the seeds he had just planted in his field. He fired once, twice, 3 times, several shots he fired off. The farmer was sure several of the shots hit the crow. Still, the bird flew away. When the farmer later told his friends what happened, he said it was like the crow looked down on him and smiled as he flew away. The next time the farmer saw the crow in his field, he was unarmed, so simply tore a silver button off of his shirt and flung it at the bird. The silver button hit the crow and clearly broke its wing. The next day, Mrs. Stinson appeared in town with her arm dangling to her side as if it were broken. Eventually, poor Mrs. Stinson passed away, and finally, at her funeral around 1825, though she was hardly more than a skeleton and weighed almost nothing, 6 of the strongest men in Peterborough who carried her to her grave were almost crushed into the earth by the weight of her coffin. All 6 of the men suffered black and blue marks on their shoulders for weeks afterwards. Local townsfolk assumed the heaviness of Mrs. Stinson's coffin was the result of the weight of all her sins, and this is all they needed to confirm what they had already believed all along, that Mrs. Stinson was really a witch.